welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to this planning committee meeting. So I'm Mary Blacker, and I'm the chair of the planning committee for this year. We start with the open session. But I gather that there are several of you wanting to speak on the Woodhead Road and the situation about speeding particularly, and other nuisances in Home Bridge. And as that item is on the agenda, what I'm going to do is bring that item forward on the agenda. And I suggest it would be better for you to speak at that point when we get to that item rather than to speak in this open session. So we have somebody else here who wishes to speak about the mobile phone mast. So, John Charlesworth, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, apologies for my appearance. I've just had to rush up from the farm. I'm going to have to rush straight back, I'm afraid. So I'm really just wanting to mention the reapplication of for the erection of the, it's now a 15-metre mobile phone mast at Muslin Hall. The original application was for an 18-metre mast, which was refused by the council. I believe that the parish council also spoke against the actual application and was first mooted. The council refusal response was the proposal not to accept the council. I noticed is hereby given that the details submitted have been refused. The reason for this is that the proposed mast, by reason of its sighting and appearance, will be a visually intrusive and incongruous feature in the streetscape, appearing wholly out of scale with the surrounding residential properties and failing to respect the character of the area. The proposed sighting and appearance of this mast will be contrary to policy LP 24A of the Kirklees local plan. What the response from the applicant has been to actually simply reduce according to what they describe as a robust solution. They reduced it from 18 metres to 15 metres. The crucial point, perhaps, is that when you actually look at the two applications, they've basically duplicated one onto the other. There's really no change from one to the other application. I personally feel like the level of the application and the amount of misrepresentation and some of the falsehoods in the application show some contempt for the actual planning application. They've not sought to take into account any of the objections which have been detailed in the first application, and they said they just basically said let's just reduce it by 3 metres. However, it really does contradict what they said in their first application, because just to quote, in the application for the 18-metre mast, they state the height of the pole has been kept to the absolute minimum, capable of providing the required essential new 5G coverage. So basically, in their own words, I think a 15-metre mast will not be adequate to provide the coverage that they're actually talking about. So, and then they go on to actually state about the robustness of the reduction in height in improving the appearance of the mast. And it isn't just the mast, of course, it's all the ancillary equipment that's been located on what is like a tiny green on the edge of the road as you go down Hayes Road. So the problem that's been with this application has been that they have just really taken no notice of any consequential objections and still ploughed ahead with this application. The actual reduction in height could actually be regarded as making it even more incongruous, because by reducing the height of the mast by only 3 metres, it actually brings the masthead equipment, the bulbous sort of science fiction bit of the structure, brings that more into the eye line, and it becomes more incongruous with the roof line of the existing buildings there. The actual height of this mast, though, is still going to be at least twice the height of the existing roof lines of the building, so it's still a massive structure. All the other problems were really detailed in the first application. compromise. So as far as I'm concerned with my submission to Kirklees Council, what I contended, which included lots of things about the problems of siting next to residential properties and the very debatable health situation with this new technology, have all been included there.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Right, and ask if we can suspend standing orders so that members of the committee can ask John questions or pass comments. Anybody? We happy to do that? Thank you. Right. Anybody wish to ask a question, make a comment? No? Thank you.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment really. I mean, I agree that the scale of the structure, I mean 18 metres to 15 metres makes a negligible difference really in terms of clear aesthetic impacts. I think there is a challenge between the desire to offer technology across the country and across our area and the structures go with it. But that said, having recently driven through the Yorkshire Dales, I'm struck by the fact that there are solutions to these things in different areas, and often in areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks. There are solutions that are created, and therefore I think we should push for a more imaginative solution, be it, as I think as a committee we suggested potentially looking at locating it in the corner of the Sycamore Recreation Ground, where potentially it's slightly lower down the ground, and that there's opportunities to shield it more effectively rather than being right on the road. So certainly I would encourage us to, when we discuss that item, to continue to lobby for a more sensitive design and location.
There may be issues with the trust deed wherever it exists for the recreation ground, because I'm sure they would have excluded any sort of commercial activity. But I'm certainly not against 5G. One of the annoying things about this application is that their essential user area, designated search area, is by their own diagrams, is shown to be in a confined area which stretches from Lidgate to the Sycamore. I suppose it's obvious because that will then give a clear shoot across to the Wooldale area. But this particular location is 200 metres outside that area, so it's not a good solution in the first place, because no doubt, as you probably know, that the 5G radio waves are now directional, and they're going to have to beam them straight across the top of Bill Lane and Town End in order to get coverage down in Wooldale. So, although I say the questions on health and so on, and other radio interference are always questionable, lots of other countries have actually either suspended or reduced the emissions far lower than what ours are. But said that obviously, the jury's out on that side of thing. But no, you're quite right. They are just restricting their site search to the main roads. They don't obviously want to pay anything, as they have had to do in the past, to private landowners to actually put them in the fields. And to actually say that that area is just urban and not rural, a densely packed residential area, when their own aerial photographs show it completely integrated with surrounding fields and woodland. I mean, one would assume that the most sensible solution would have been to find somewhere distant from existing properties, somewhere on the side of Thursley Banks, for example, suitably camouflaged by trees, which then would have a clear shoot straight across the Wooldale.
John,
but of course, they would probably have to pay a landowner for the site.
John, thank you. Thank you very much. I know you need to get back to work. I mean, it is an item on the agenda later on, but we're just noting at that point. So
okay.
Obviously, another application will come back, and at that point, we will take all these issues into account. So thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, let's move on to the item 81, which is the recording of the meeting. Do any members of the public present wish to record the meeting, make provision? The meeting is being recorded by the Deputy Clerk, so thank you. Right, item 82, apologies for absence.
Councillor Gould and Councillor Paul Dixon.
Thank you. And Item 83, have any members or officers wish to disclose pecuniary or personal interests?
I've got personal interest in item 13 on the planning list, just because it's a friend of mine.
Thank you. Anyone else to declare? No? Thank you. Right. And any written requests for new DPI dispensations? Nope. Rich, thank you. Item 85, do we want to discuss any items in private session? No. Right. Item 86, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, of which you've had 2 copies. The second one has a slight correction on it. So are you happy to accept the minutes?
Propose accepting those.
Propose accepted. Thank you. That's right. And the next item is the election of the vice chairman, which our agenda was so crowded at the last meeting we didn't manage to do this. So we need to elect a vice chairman. I'm happy to propose Councillor Thomas Dixon, if he's willing to accept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Second that, right. All in favour? Yep, thanks. Congratulations, Tom.
Thanks, everyone. What
I'm going to ask the members now, if we can move item 94, which is the concerns of local residents regarding speeding and noise pollution on Woodhead Road. Are you happy to move that forward to this point in the agenda?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So, I understand there might be 4 of you wanting to speak. We'll just see. Right. But first, I think Micah, thank you. Michael O'Connor would like to say something. If you want to come to the front to speak, that's fine. So you're not speaking to people's backs. It's up to you, whoever you feel comfortable with.
Don't need me 3 minutes, it only takes about 2. But I know Janet, my neighbour, wants to have a word as well. So I'm just here to pass on concerns of the residents of Home Valley, particularly Homebridge and the village of Home, about the increasing challenges we're facing in terms of traffic speed, noise and fume pollution and safety issues for adults, children, those with disabilities, household pets and important wildlife. We've also got quality of life for residents that live in the area that's been significantly impacted. So I noted from the consultation Home Valley Parish Council had in 2017 that it was noted as a problem. It was number 1 on the priorities list for residents. However, we're unsure what action's been taken, what accountability, where that lies at the moment. And the requirement was to slow the traffic down at the time and implement 20-mile-an-hour zones in the villages. So just to summarise, our current long-standing issues are excessive and premature speeding of all traffic, not just motorbikes. I know people think that we're targeting motorbikes, but it is quad bikes, cars, motorbikes as well. We've got issues been raised about walkers and visitors walking, residents that live in the areas, children's, household pets and wildlife. I've had reports of an injury from a child in the preschool area and disabled residents experiencing safety fears. We've also got noise and fume pollution because of the speeding traffic. I have been recording some decibel measurements on an app that I've got on my phone, which isn't obviously a validated way of measuring them, but they are exceeding what they would class as eardrum damaging levels. And I can get those over to you if you want them. And we've got impact on the quality of life for residents. The conversations I've had recently have been that they have to stop conversations in their own home, they have to have the windows and doors closed in the bank holidays, summer evenings, and this noise can start anything from 4:30 in the morning right up to 11 o'clock at night, and it can be relentless when the weather's nice. So what we're asking as a group of residents is that we want a reduction of the speed between Shaw Lane and Home Village to 20. I think that's the right, wasn't it, Tim? Yeah. Additional traffic calming measures, but we want these in consultation and agreement with the residents. So we want something that's going to be in keeping with how the village looks. And we want a removal of the 60-mile-an-hour zone on Woodhead Road up to and including Home Village. In terms of public petition, currently we're at 122 signatures online and over 150 manual signatures, which is growing. And we're also aware there's a climate change emergency committee which would like to be involved for consideration of noise and fume pollution issues, if you could involve them as well, please. And I'm just here today to ask if you can support our request, listen to the people of Home Valley, approach carefully and get something done for us, please.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Janet?
Yeah,
Potterstone?
I'll come forward.
Thank you.
Very much seconding what Micah has just said. We live next door to one another, and I've been lucky to be a resident on there for the last 35 years. So I have seen traffic has evolved in numbers and everything over this time. But particularly during this pandemic, we have noticed that there is a lot more recreational movement of people that's going on, motorbikes in particular, and they don't go around generally in ones, they go around in gangs, and when they sort of set off at the bottom of Home Banks, which is where I live, they just open the throttle and they just go for it, and they really are stopping conversations within the house, not just in the garden, but also making it very unsafe when we're out walking the dog. There are no footpaths there, so you have to be very mindful as to when you go out and how you walk your dog and everything. And it's getting a little bit scary now. Coming down from home to the Home Banks, it goes from 60 to 30. And nobody does 30 mile an hour when they're going round that bend, which is where we both live. And sometimes you just sort of like, you take a breath in and you're just waiting for that crunch because you think, oh, who's coming up and who can't get down and everything. So it really is affecting life in lots and lots of different ways now. Where we do have pavements, they are often blocked by cars that seem to think, oh, that's a nice parking space and it'll get us out of the way. Or the wheelie bins. The wheelie bins are an issue, but that's maybe not something we're talking about today. We just need a very thorough survey and monitoring of what's going on around the area that Micah mentioned, because it is the volume we can't help. People are allowed to use the roads, but it's how they're using them and how they're being mindful to people who are actually living there and taking care of themselves. We have at the bottom of the hill a nursery and a preschool. It doesn't have any signage up to say that they're there. They don't have the flashing lights. And when the children who are encouraged to walk to school today set off some mornings, I'm quite fearful for them really, because cars are just parked. They can't see always where they're going and they're sort of like nipping in and around. So a review of the traffic situation, calming measures we do need. But I was just thinking about calming measures, and we don't just want those sort of like squares in the middle of the road, because the motorbikes can go up the middle of them. We just need them straight across the road really, where everybody has to think about what they're doing and how they approach it. And yeah, we just need it sorting out, please, because we need somebody to come and have a look at it, because I don't think it's only us that is affected by it, but even visitors and people who are out walking and things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Janet. Tim, do you wish to add something? Tim Warshaw.
I think everybody's covered everything that we've sort of discussed. I'm here really to be supportive with the community and try to link everybody up to the right people, people which can actually voice stronger than what we are. One thing that I have noticed though, even though that we are wanting the traffic calming of down to 20 miles an hour, just to give you a quick one, I went over to Ossett today and I drove between Ossett and Huddersfield, and the amount of 20 mile an hour zones that I went through in that area, I was quite impressed. And that got me thinking to our own neighbourhood plan that we've all worked on, including myself. And on page 102 of it, under 4.10, improving public access for local infrastructure, traffic and transport infrastructure, 4.10.2, it does talk about road safety speeds, e.g. making the village centres of 20 mile an hour zones to ensure that drivers are respectful to the places that people live and the fact that people can walk around safely. We spent a lot of money on this neighbourhood plan. Let's try and put it into action. It goes on to draft policy 11, improving transport accessibility and local infrastructure. Number 5 there is proposals to create 20 mile an hour speed limits for residential areas are encouraged. I think we should encourage it. And, you know, this is what's been going on for a number of years now. Let's put what's on paper and what the public want and all the money that we've spent on it to some good use. And I know the parish council can't make decisions and do things, you know, but what we can do is we can write to Kirklees on behalf of 150 signed residents and 122 on the online one. That's a lot of people in a small area. So I really feel that something should be done. I know this has been covered in the past by other members of the public and have contacted the police and things. I've contacted the police and had speed checks put down that road. That's not good enough. Some of the things as well is that the most effective thing is pinch points. If you look at all the statistics of what works and what doesn't work. One area of concern as well is for people with local disabilities, round where the old post office was. The pavement's not wide enough there, and people going to Square Peg at the Village Hall and Church Hall have to come round the corner on the road. If we reduce it to 20, we're going to be making it much safer for them as well. I know I've still got my 3 minutes, and I'm in on that. I want to raise another point on the Market Hall in Home Firth. I think that we should retain that building for a number of reasons, really. One, in the neighbourhood plan, yet again, page 93, 94, we talk about retaining public buildings, including the market halls under page 94, 93, 94, as I just mentioned. Home Valley Neighbourhood Plan, Regulation 14, Draft Plan and Consultation 2018 V5.2, Market Halls. The other thing is as well is that the Home Valley Parish Council assigned themselves to a climate change emergency. And it is a known fact that knocking down buildings and building concrete car parks has much more impact of carbon release than it is to actually to do up the building. So I think that we should stick to the morals of the Home Valley Parish Council and retain the building. Now, I've read through I think it was 33 comments on it. And the thing is that everybody's commented as if it really is a public consultation. Kirklees are putting in this planning application. Kirklees are going to make a decision on the planning application. Surely that's a conflict of interest. And I think we should let them know that. And the other thing is as well is that highways issues, it's going to create more highways issues. I think what they're trying to do is mitigate the extra parking for the loss of parking on Victoria Street and on Hightown, of which I feel that it should have only been half a residential area on Hightown, but that's another matter, because we have lost car parking. The other thing is if they did knock the Market Hall down and put a car park, they put an electric car charging point in the new side, but if they add that for events as what it suggests might happen, nobody's going to go out and charge the car at the charging point because there's going to be an event held. I've spoken to many people in the valley up and down, and the consensus I've come across is that everybody wants to retain the market. One comment on the comments made by the public, and I don't know who that is, said that you ought to look at Altrincham Market. I hadn't looked at Altrincham Market. I did look at Altrincham Market, and they have all these food halls, you know, street food and everything. They've got permanent farmers markets in there. We should be supporting that. And we live in the UK, and it rains more than it shines. And we should retain our buildings. The neighbourhood plan says we should retain our buildings. The climate change emergency policies over pulling buildings down and rebuilding concrete car parks is much more negative towards the environment than it is just doing it up. So I'd like the parish council to reject this application, not only on that, but I know that we can't reject it on that, but we can reject it on highways issues because of the extra exit point, which is going to make the congestion in Holmfirth that we are all concerned about even worse.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks very much. Right. Councillor Trevor Bellamy, did you wish to speak about the Woodhead Road?
Yes, if I may, please. I'll be as brief as I can. First, I'd like to say I'm very enthused at the number of people who have been involved and gone to the trouble of signing documents or whatever. That's very, very, very good. With regard to the sounds from the vehicles going on Woodhead Road, we most certainly, we live in Islip Mill, at the side of the road, so we get a true indication of what is happening. There's a recent thing turned up. There's a lot of vehicles going through now with some sort of exhaust fitted that bangs and pops. I don't know what that is. I have no idea, but it must be a thing that young lads are aspiring to on the cars now. We haven't spoken about the time of day, any particular time of day when this is a major problem. Now, as far as Innscliffe Mill is concerned, our problem time is 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And it's either 2s, 3s, sometimes 4 racing on. We actually relate to that as being the drugs road, because we know at different times the police have actually had vehicles up there on the public car parks where they presume exchanges of finance, etc. has been taking place. But that is a nightly event. I don't see, you can't set your clock by it, but not so far off, that's for sure.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That is true.
This good lady mentioned children's routes for school. That's been a thing that's happened for many, many years, and I don't know that it's still as active as it was, to be honest. But I'll certainly make a point of looking into that, because that's an area that we're very much responsible for. The other bit is the wheelchair situation, walking along the pavement areas. Not just wheelchairs, but mums with prams, etc., etc. What we can do about certain areas of that, I'm not really sure, but we can certainly talk about that. We can certainly bring it up at meetings and pass the problem along. Let somebody else have a go at it. The one we can do something about is dustbins, wheelie bins. I consider them a complete disaster. They really can. They're getting more and more. The rule was none are to be left on the pavement. None are to be put in the public roadway. If you hadn't somewhere to keep one, you didn't have one. When they first started, the dozens, if not hundreds of houses in this area had nowhere to keep a wheelie bin. They were issued with plastic bags. Also, that seems to have gone by the wayside to a large extent. But that is something we could do something about. Could take that up and try and get some explanations on that. And the other bit I wanted to mention was ramps and humps, or plateaus, or whatever title they need to be given. I spent virtually a lifetime driving ambulances, and what I can honestly say is any areas where there's humps, bumps, plateaus, or whatever, if you've got an ill person in the back of an ambulance or somebody's had an accident, the last thing you want to be doing is bouncing over the hump in the road. It's a terrible experience driving a vehicle of that sort with somebody suffering in the back. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Bellamy. Yeah, I just want to echo what what Councillor Bellamy said, you know, that how good it is to see so many people come here to make their views felt. So thank you enormously for that.
Mike has worked really hard on that.
It's Micah's, right.
Can I answer the question that Mr. Bellamy spoke about the when things happen? I get a very sinking feeling on a Friday night if the weatherman tells me we're going to have a lovely weekend, Saturday and Sunday, because you've got the cyclists going up, shouting at one another at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then for the rest of the day they're up and down that road until it's dark, and the people coming down late at night. Yes, I can say that happens as well. And tonight it will have happened while we were here. The lads on the motorbikes will have been out while it's been nice weather and before it gets dark. So it's kind of spoiling life a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
No, it isn't. It's spoiling us a lot,
It's
really.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Do any members of the committee want to ask any questions or make any comments? I mean, the item on the agenda is we to consider further any further action, and I would assume that we probably do wish to take further action along some of the lines that have been suggested. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear the array of evidence and views. I know the road well, so I know that it's well, I drive along it, cycle along it. Don't have a motorbike, fortunately, but I know it can be very busy. I run along it, so I'm familiar with the bits of pavement that aren't very wide. I think there's a challenge, isn't there, with some of these major roads, because it is a reasonably major road, and balancing things like what Trevor was mentioning with, ambulances don't like tabletops or sleeping policemen, as they used to be called, but then it's difficult to see what other traffic calming measures actually have an impact aside from a sign. And I'm always struck by any road, anywhere, even if there's a slow speed limit, the people who are going to roar along with noisy exhaust don't really care what the speed limit is. They just assume they just won't get caught. But that's not to say that we shouldn't try and identify where areas are residential. And as was pointed out in the Neighbourhood Development Plan through its evolution, and it's due to go to referendum later this year, and I'm pleased to say that the final version, which goes through Kirklees at the end of this month, still includes reference to the desire for us to push for 20 mile an hour zones in residential areas. And I think certainly the section up to Home Village, although there is that sort of section between Home Village and Homebridge Church and Preschool that arguably would be quite difficult, I think, to retain at 20 miles an hour. That feels to me like a section that would probably end up having to go up slightly to then come down again as you came to Home Village. But anyway, I'm not a highways person, so I don't know. But you need something that actually is evidenced in terms of residential areas being 20 miles an hour. And as has been mentioned in other parts of Kirklees, we have sections like all through Honley, that's 20 miles an hour. It's not an issue, it's just accepted, and most people adhere to that. Obviously, I have no doubt in the middle of Honley there's people who roar through at antisocial times of day, but at least if the sort of the majority of people are then adhering to that slower speed, that does then have an impact on how the space is used and how comfortable people feel. And one of the things I think is, again, difficult with pavements, with the design of houses that we have, the historic heritage we have, but there are other options, say even up, and they're not perfect, but they do help, with things like up, what's called now, New Road, up to Leatherthorne, where I used to live a number of years back. It's not a pavement, but it's a white line that denotes the space, which is effectively a pavement. And I used to walk up and down there with a pushchair and felt quite comfortable, certainly during the daytime, because you felt drivers could see that there was a distinct area that was for pedestrians. So I think there are options, and I think as Parish Council we should certainly write to Kirklees, to the Highways Department, and raise the concerns that you've all mentioned, and throw our weight behind the fact that we'd like full consideration of all the elements you've mentioned in terms of both accessibility, but more importantly the reduction of speeds, and seek their comments and advice on what the most productive things to do would be.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Sorry,
I've got a meeting scheduled with my scout ahead of Highway on the 8th
it. I have it. Right. Does anybody thank you anymore? Right. First Tom and then Andy.
Yes, I was going to mention about the 20 mile an hour, and it's because as I'm aware in the Home Valley, there's only two places I can think of where there's 20 mile an hour limit plate. It's Holly Village, which also got speed bumps as well, and in Bagdale, I think. I don't really know anywhere else. Like my ward is Hepworth, with people, residents wanted a 20 mile an hour limit plate in there. We were told by ward councillors that they couldn't get it to happen. It's really difficult to get it in place, but there is other places in the Home Valley that can really do with it as well, which is why it's really good that it's in the local plan, and hopefully it's something we can try and get in there, because I can understand why you'd want it in Homebridge at that point. Hepworth might need it. There's parts of Hayed Edge just outside of here which you can do with it as well, but that's another item on the agenda completely. But in general, the 20 mile an hour limit would be good. I totally agree with what Rachel said as well, that there will always be idiots who will not stick to it. There'll be people on the noisy bikes, people with the stupid exhaust, which Trevor mentioned, young lads who do all that kind of thing. And they're going to be noisy. And I'm not making an excuse, but I think like one of the things with the pandemic is there's a lot more people doing these trips around at the moment rather than going on holiday. So I'm not saying you don't have a problem, but like it's probably a bit worse at the moment now maybe than it would have been a couple of years ago. Maybe then it would be in a couple of years' time, hopefully. But it still will be a problem. There'll still be people driving too fast, like it's been mentioned. I was going to say speed bumps, it would be a really good idea to it, but Trevor doesn't think that's the ambulances, which is a really good point. I didn't think about that. As an ambulance driver, you think about these things. I still think speed bumps could be quite good for there. Like you might have them coming down the hill towards where the band room is, where the nursery is, and then maybe just by where...
We need one above there, so everybody's slower before they get down to it.
Yeah, I've walked down that road before as well. People do fly down there.
I think having the 60 mile an hour zone there, it makes people open up before they get to
Yeah.
See, the thing with where it's sighted at 60 mile an hour, the bikes come round the corner at the church, and then they immediately see that 60 mile an hour sign. They don't take into consideration all residents, children, animals, and everything like everybody just said. So as soon as they see that 60 mile an hour sign, all they think is open up.
Get around the corner and put the foot down.
Yeah.
So you could potentially look at speed bumps with rumble lines on either side, which sort of minimises the disturbance for the emergency vehicles. I get that they've got to be considered.
Yeah, I think
the rumble lines could.
Yeah.
Just before I ask Andy to speak, I think what I'd like to offer or suggest really is if I meet you Micah, so that I can get a comprehensive list of what the issues are. Okay, before the 8th of September. I mean, we've obviously noted quite a few, but there are probably other issues as well that we
pleased to attend that meeting as well.
So we can then put them in our communication with Kirklees Highways.
Yeah.
So I have got your email address, so I'll sort out. Yeah.
Just a really short one. The main things which are the things that stop people. Top of the list is pinch points. You know where you go and one has got a way through and you've got to stop. So that's called a pinch point, and that is the most effective of slowing down. Obviously that's difficult with the area, but it's something you've got to consider. The other one is, and everybody's mentioned this, you're not going to stop the people that go fast. The only way that you're going to deter them is a speed camera.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Fume. So, Andy, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point about that there are two separate issues that are interrelated to some extent. The speed, which, I mean, there are various solutions to control speed. Noise is very difficult. I'm more aware of the noise from where I live because it echoes around the valley. And of course, it's not just on the stretch up to home. As soon as I get through home, the racket going up home house, it really does echo around the valley.
Yeah.
We're very aware of it. Sundays particularly, Sunday. Very difficult to do anything about, and I have asked the police about this. They did have some experimental sort of noise monitors, I think it was in the London area, where they were actually doing roadside, a bit like a speed camera for noise, but whether it's ever got any further than that, I don't know.
Irish fans are doing it.
Oh, they're doing it in the air as well.
Yeah, they've got it automatic, so it's actually giving them a ticket for being too noisy.
And of course these people actually modify the vehicles to make them more noisy, which is a ridiculous thing to me. Sort of mentioned about the banging and popping.
Yeah, double valves.
The banging and popping, they advance the ignition to such an extent it backfires.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Plus lots of emissions and fuel out.
Yeah.
You know, global climate change emergency, we've got to do this.
But from the police's point of view, it is very difficult, given the powers that they have at the moment, to do anything about noise.
Yeah, I agree.
Speed, relatively easy.
I'm conscious of the time, and we've still got some quite weighty items on the agenda still to come. So I think just summarise what we've agreed to do is that I'll meet and I'll make a comprehensive list of issues, and then we'll communicate with Kirklees Highways, asking for some action on the lines that Rachel suggested. Are you?
The contacts there as well, right? You give the contact email addresses of them, the Kirklees, and then that makes it easy for you.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep. So I'll be in touch, Mike. So thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to move on to the next item on the agenda now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if
You
you
can
want
stay.
to.
You don't have to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trevor and Kath know what the meeting's about, so they're off. So did you know what the meetings are about, so you're off straight away, your first one's up.
Thank you so much for coming.
This chap goes behind me. He's got one of these sports cars. And he sets up early in the morning. It's like a plane, we're playing flying over work. And it makes an absolute racket.
Nice to see you, Tim.
Oh, it's just that guy again. It comes back away, it can wake you up as well. Making real rackets with these guys. Oh. Well, you can call them all the weird names, but yeah.
You made it then.
Yes. 5:45 I get that.
Did you know it's just done? Cycle Scarborough?
I didn't cycle to Scarborough. We drove to Whitby and then cycled Whitby, Scarborough, a bit further, camped, and then back to Whitby.
I mean, you've driven back here today. Why don't you cycle up today? That's impressive.
Yeah, was taking a car from Scarborough. It's only 80 miles or so. What's wrong with you?
Well, that was a very impressive turnout, wasn't it? Right, back to...
We were expecting a lot of people
expecting
because we were going to be discussing the 147 houses.
The Woodhead Road
expecting loads of
Brockholes. A lot of councillors were coming and members of the public, so that's why we moved it here. But perhaps just as well, Rick. Quite a few.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
let's go. Item 88, completed Kirklees planning applications list. Noted. Noted. Thank you. Right, let's get on to our planning applications. Right. Rachel, sorry, we all got them right in front of us? Yep. Okay, thanks. So, first one.
Oh, sorry, I'm coming. Yeah, I thought this was fine.
Yeah, so did I. Okay, support.
let's keep it that speedy.
Let's keep going. Okay, the next one.
Sorry, was that the Woodhead Road?
Yes, Vermont 95A. Right.
I didn't like the flat roof. We're getting rid of a nice apex roof and putting a flat one on. And the next door is an apex.
I wonder why they're doing that for.
Cheap.
Cheapness, yes. Yeah.
Well, they're opening up their drive as well, so it's much
Yes. Number 2, Tom, this was a full stone.
Sorry, I'm just stuck on my agenda. Right, I've walked it out today.
It was 3 Holling House.
Yeah, is this the one?
Holling House Lane.
What was this one?
Didn't have much detail on this one, I thought.
Holling House Lane. I think I walked to this one. Have I missed this one? Have I missed this one?
The side extension.
Yeah.
Without sounding stupid, where's Holling House Lane?
What did you, Rachel? What did you?
To be honest, I thought we should leave it to Kirklees. On the basis it's already there. So if we object to it, then
yeah,
want to get torn down.
Yeah, I was unsure about it, really. so shall we just say no decision and
No comment.
go with Kirklees? Yeah. Okay, right. And the next one is yours, Andy.
Yes, Pennine Close.
Yes.
I've got a bit of a thing about garages and getting rid of garages, and it creates a parking issue. But I think in this case it doesn't. They're still retaining off-road parking spaces. The only thing that occurred to me was it will be overlooking the neighbour's garden, this veranda that they're proposing. Having said that, the neighbours don't appear to have made any complaint about that.
I thought it was okay. I didn't think there'd be much overlooking, I don't know, but there might have been.
When
I
you look on Google
might have
Maps,
missed
it
a
looks
window.
great because it's a field, but when you go there, there's all houses
Right,
there.
yeah, you mean, yeah, right. So you happy to support?
Yeah.
Support?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the plans are a bit deceptive from that point of view. It's like when people just sort of hatch outside and don't know that there's a whole extra
That's
stuff
right.
down there.
Right.
Yeah, but it's okay.
And the next one, 101 Woodhead Road.
Formation of off-street parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was basically a parking bay involved moving bins. I
Mm.
think, well, we need the surface to be porous, but we know that Kirklees already picked that up. But there was concern that from Kirklees, which I think or is it me? Maybe it's me, I don't know. I'm concerned insufficient space for bins, and I can't remember if Kirklees expressed that concern as well. Because actually in their picture they show fewer bins than are there, if you go and look, which suggests that it's going to be...
Which means the bins don't
extra
fit
bins.
in, yes.
Yes, so
Yeah,
I'm not happy
The
that
bins
they're...
look better in their existing
Yes,
place.
they did.
I thought.
Yes,
So shall we
I think refuse it on the basis
shall
that
we
it
oppose
appears
this one
to
then?
Yes.
clutter the highway with excess bins.
I think they mentioned something about the wall as well, didn't they?
Yes,
Okay.
concerned about taking down a bit of
Demolition of the wall. Yeah.
It's from the conservation area, so that might...
So
Yeah.
I'm putting the concern of the bins, not the...
That's highways, isn't it? Highways
that's,
issue.
That's, yeah. It is, yeah. Okay. And moving... Yes, you again. Yes.
Yeah, this was... well, the conservation officer was okay with it. It looked all right, to be honest. It was an extension and changes the garage and the connection between them. But I thought it looked all right, provided materials were keeping.
Okay, I thought it did. So support. This is a really thorough process, isn't it? Right. Next one's called, as Paul Dixon isn't here. I thought this 55 Grieve Road, I thought that was okay, so
Yeah, I agree.
happy to go back.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
support. And then we have another Fordstone one.
Yeah, have a look at this one, Chair.
Yeah.
This is a classic example of somebody like putting up a massive garage with a space above it, and then about 5 or 6 years later converting said garage into a house. I can't think of any planning reasons why we shouldn't accept this, because it's on a quiet road and it's in a quiet area and there's plenty of space for it.
Yeah.
But it's just classic what they've done, and it's a bit cheeky, but you can't refuse a planning application for being a bit cheeky, so I think it's okay.
No, perhaps come back and I want to do something else with it. Okay, so that's support. That was number 7. Number 8, number 8 was the discharge of conditions, which is one of the situation where we've decided to do a standard reply, which is we make no observation but support the position of Kirklees officers.
Yep.
Okay. And then we're back to you, Andy, for
Victoria
14
Springs.
Victoria Springs.
Again, this is another one of these sort of veranda type things, but it's actually tucked well away. I had a job finding where it was. I think it's looking
So
down
tucked
from
away.
the woods, you know, it's I don't really think there's any issue there.
So it says support.
Yeah.
Support, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's quite a lot of only ones down the path, so here's your first.
With this one I thought was straightforward, just support it, I couldn't see anything.
Me too, yeah. Okay, support.
There were a couple that were slightly less similar.
Yes. Right. Right, this Penley. Now this adjacent to Penley, but actually it's the land
Yeah, it's
between New Mill. Coming out of New Mill on the right hand side. So
yeah, just past where the wreck is and the wooded area. And
Yeah.
there's a big field there,
Yeah.
and there's a house which had the land which used to have some sheep in it. And now they're putting an application in to build 2 5-bedroom houses and a 3-bedroom house. I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised. Like, I thought they might try and put more houses in on that site because it's fairly big. I thought they might try and put in more for it. I thought they might even demolish the old house that was there and try and build something different. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is the kind of application where they try and get this one through and then try and change it later on and get more through. I don't really like it because, like, I think the Home Valley's got plenty of 5-bedroom houses and big houses like that, and the 3-bedroom houses we're going to build there is going to be really nice, and also our price range of a lot of first-time buyers and that. I don't think it's a planning reason to refuse it. It's not in the green belt, it's just a field there. It's a shame that the field's going to go, but I don't really know what we can refuse it on. I don't like it, but I don't know what we can refuse it on.
I mean, we refused
maybe highways.
when it came last time. We refused it, and it's been to the planning inspectorate who then overturned Kirklees ruling, so they've come back again with it. Last time we objected last time, and we criticised the fact it was ribbon development.
I think we can do that again.
If we can refuse it on that, then
I would really like to.
I think
I'd
it's
really
going
like to object.
It's going to end up with houses built there
Yeah.
eventually. It will happen, and there's
Yes.
junctions across from it as well. So there is potential highways
Yeah.
issues there. 'Cause I know someone was knocked down there and died quite a few years ago. Because unfortunately, I was one of the first people on the scene.
So
there is potential highways because people do drive too fast on that road. It's another one of those roads where people come out of New Mill past the junction and then start smashing it up that hill all the way around.
Everyone drives too fast everywhere, Tom. It's in fact.
Yeah, it's one of those wide roads where people do it. Yeah.
Shall we continue our objection then? Shall we object? Let's
Yeah.
object. So,
Can we
there
also
is
express
highways, yes.
Disappointment that there's
Objects that
three
it's been
large houses.
3 large, yeah. And there's no statement about environmental issues that I could see anyway. So I think we should. Because we've said with large, it doesn't qualify as a larger development, but it's more than one house. That really we should be looking for a statement on how they're going to address climate emergency.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Is that okay, Rich?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. Moving on to the Bayfield Close Hayverd, which is me again. It is a very large extension, but I couldn't really see why I couldn't support it. So.
The only thing I thought the parking on their sketch, that it claimed that it would retain parking for 3 cars. But that was a very imaginative fitting of the cars. It didn't look
Yes,
like that was
yeah.
true, to be honest. And I wondered about the impact of overlooking on neighbours. I wouldn't necessarily object to the principle, but I wondered if it was slightly oversized.
Right. Right. And did anybody else look? No. Just two of us. I'm happy to. I just thought it was huge. It was a very large extension.
When we say disproportionate.
Disproportionate, yes. So we shall object.
Yeah.
Yeah. Disproportionately large, and there is an issue about
And concerned about the impact on
bins
parking.
again. Parking, yeah. Parking bins. Perhaps it's not subservient to the existing building. Without measuring it, it's difficult to say. Right. And another one. 49 Ryefields Schools. I I was uncertain about this one. Did you look?
Well, I know them. I did
Oh,
look.
is this the one that knows the
it,
person who
yeah,
owns
so
it?
I
You
wouldn't
can't comment, can you? Right. There was one neighbourhood objection about loss of privacy, and it's a very large extension with large windows at the back, but only ground floor windows on the side of the extension. I'm in two minds about it, really. Nobody else looked at it, I assume, so I can know it's going to help me out here. Sorry.
We could say the issues of overlooking. We could express.
Yeah. Can we express concepts?
Yeah. We can say approved subject to there being no overlooking.
Yeah.
And,
Object,
and
yeah. And 4A town gates. This was interesting. No
Oh,
idea.
this was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the unit above Sid's Cafe, which is going to turn into a flat. It was previously a hairdresser's. I can't remember what it was called, Snippers or something like that. Not Snippers, but it was something like that. I don't know, cuttings or something like that. Anyway, that is irrelevant. I support it. It's good to have in the middle of town.
Yeah.
I support.
Yeah.
Support.
And it hasn't been used for a number of years, so it's good to
Yeah.
2 years it's been empty currently. Yeah. And good to get small. Yeah. Yes, a small dwelling place. So. Right, Pat. Is this one of the ones
Well,
that's
this
slightly
one-
less?
As far as I can
15.
see, that there's one thing that
Oh.
we would need to tell them to do, which is already there, but I can kind of live with them not realising you need planning permission for a shed. I sort of understand, you might overlook that, though it's irritating. But they seem to have added a bedroom but not a parking space. Assuming you can sleep in this residential unit, which is for letting out,
This is
and
the shepherd's
indeed the
hall.
plan shows that it has a bedroom,
This is the shepherd's hall.
yes, but it's for sleeping, it's for rent, it's an Airbnb type.
Yeah.
So they've added a bedroom, but not a parking space. They had 3 before and they've got
Yeah.
3 now.
Yeah.
So I think we can object on that
Yeah.
grounds. The Kirklees people were saying they have to put in electric charges as well.
Yeah. And yes.
But that's just reiterating what the Kirklees people, the officer had said.
Blame David Cameron for all this shepherd's huts.
I mean, it's quite nice looking.
It
I
does
don't
look
think, I mean, all the neighbour objections,
I
you can't do anything
No.
about people talking at night in the garden or having, or making a noise. There's nothing whatever you can do about that. It's not a planning issue. It doesn't overlook anybody. It looks quite nice, but they haven't made an extra parking space.
Yeah, I thought it looked lovely, actually.
It
Wow,
looks really.
it's a really
I
fancy shed.
stayed in an Airbnb in Dundee that was a shed at the end of the garden. It was fabulous.
I thought it looked really nice, and I'm with you on the fact that, if it's noise well, it's their garden anyway, so you
Yeah.
could live next door to a family.
Yeah,
who
they
are
could
always
be out
playing
there
in the
making
garden,
a noise,
it's
yeah.
just, but I must admit, I didn't pick up the fact there wasn't an additional
No,
parking space.
And it is tough down. I mean,
Picked up
parking
the
down
parking,
there, it's
yeah.
all very narrow,
I do
higgledy-piggledy.
support the principle of providing holiday accommodation in the
Yeah.
area.
Yes.
So Personally, I'd support the principle, but
Mm.
wish them to address the parking space, because they could probably provide one in the...
So they might have to eat into their garden a bit.
Yeah, but they could do that with poor, they could have a mesh that grass grows through and
Yeah,
stuff, so there's
yeah.
ways around it.
There were 2 very, very determined letters, and I thought perhaps they were from the same household because they were pretty much the same, weren't they? But there were 2 supportive comments as well along the line.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're going on about there being a hot tub and
A
things.
hot
Well,
tub, yes, and
they
the-
could have a hot tub of
and
their
the
own. In
light-
fact,
the
if I
lights-
were them, I'd get one and make as much
And the lighting. The company light. So are we objecting on the grounds of...
Well, I support
You support?
if they
Support,
can...
Okay, well let's support, but yeah, okay.
Subject to provision of parking.
with assuming
Subject
provision
to-
of
yeah.
parking, that
Yeah.
they've added a bedroom.
Okay.
But bearing in mind, it's only a shepherd's hut, it's clearly only for 2 people. and therefore they only need to provide the one space. Because the
Yeah, it's
implication
only
was
one
there'd be
space. Yeah, they're
parties
not
and
going to have
stuff.
6 in there, are they? So it's,
I thought it was really clever, so the layout inside.
and it looks really nice.
It does look really nice.
Anyway, right.
Holiday there. Right, okay, number 16. All right. Another one. I found this. I
Let me
found
have a
this
look at my notes.
difficult to follow.
I didn't understand the application, to be honest.
No,
As far as I
it's
could
difficult
see,
to follow.
the only changes, the substantial changes were internal. I looked at the plans. As far as I could see, there was no change to the outside, but they are probably, I deduced, reconfiguring windows and
Yeah.
a roof light and things.
It was a bit like spot the difference because the
Yeah.
the proposed and the existing,
I
and I was
couldn't see
looking for
any
one to
difference,
think
yeah.
what is the difference?
There was quite
It
a lot of changes inside, I could see
minimal.
that, but I
Yeah.
think they probably, it's just, I mean, I can't see any reason to object, and I don't really know what a
We
certificate
leave
of
to
proposed
Claire's-
lawfulness is.
Leave to
Leave
Curtis.
to Curtis.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got a lot, haven't you, Pat? So.
Now, where's this one? Fairbanks, number 17. I said support. It's a posh shed. It's nice.
Shade, yeah. Okay, I was happy with that one. Support.
Yeah.
Number 17. And number 18. Alright.
I'm very concerned about this. I think the density is what bothers me. They're
Yeah.
putting, is it 5 houses on a space where one was?
I didn't like this.
And I'm very, and they've created all the parking and they seem to be, but I don't want to support it. I want to refuse because of the density. Is that something we can refuse?
Over-intensification.
Over-intensification.
Sorry?
Over-intensification.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're objecting because of, overdevelopment, over-intensification.
There were quite a lot of neighbour comments about it as
yeah.
well.
Yes, there were.
And one of the neighbours rightly raised that it didn't really show whether it was going to be sort of how many stories it was going to be, and most of the properties that were single story.
Yeah, it was
And
quite
therefore
difficult.
potentially it can make quite a big impact.
It's a high-raised issues with it as well, with the increase of houses.
Yeah.
As,
And
another
also,
area.
I think we should put something about not addressing environmental climate emergency because, again, it's one of the largest.
And you get the impression they're squashing so much in that, in theory, they've got off-street parking for all those cars. In practice, you won't be able to open the door to get out of your car if you park there. So they'll end up on the road.
Yeah, I mean, there were the type of smaller houses that perhaps we should be encouraging, but not at that density. Okay, so that's subject. And,
It's a shame, yes, because it's a local small developer, which is the kind of developer we want, isn't it? But
It's too much.
the next one, 26, 28. Change of use to form one apartment.
which one's this?
Number 19.
Oh, that's me again, sorry.
It's you. I'm sorry, yes, it's you again.
You get a grade for this one, Pat.
19, I had it, I've got notes here somewhere. Oh, damn it.
Is this on the main road?
It's opposite
Yeah.
the Kirklees depot, but it's kind of behind. It's not on the
Yeah.
front.
I had support, I can't see any problems with it at all.
Okay.
I think
Happy
welcome
with
the
that.
addition of
So-
the
Yeah,
small
that's a
storage.
small apartment,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Now moving on to number 20, which is Andy's. Unusually, I had a letter from the
What, through the post? On paper?
it's okay.
Come on, have a look at it. I haven't seen one of those for years.
Send you a postcard.
I got it here. It's got I did. Yeah, the person wanting to do the development was concerned that there might be neighbour objections, and having been that, I suspect I know how that might be or where it might come from. But anyway, Andy, you'll have looked at it
I
already.
haven't seen that letter, or, what are the contents of that letter in summary?
Sorry, I meant I was going to fax it to
I
you,
know
and then
you
my,
had difficulty with it,
my
didn't you?
not fax, scan and send it. Not fax.
You can wait
My
till
age, aren't I?
Is it possible still to
Yes, it's still.
It does, yeah, but
Does it make any difference to anything?
No, So I'm really sorry. I don't know why it suddenly went on
It's
strike. It
used
was
in
okay the
football
last time we
transfers.
used it.
Football transfers have to
Oh,
be
could
faxed
have to have
through.
real signature.
You have to be faxed through. You can't have them like done like by email or phone call. It's have to send fax through, and if your fax don't go through in time after transfer deadline day, then the player can't go to you.
Well, you would know
Yeah,
this
it's
with
still-
your possible transfer to Manchester City.
I wish.
There were no neighbour objections.
Oh, I'll get you
There was
now.
concern.
You get the joke.
I thought you meant me going to Man City, yeah, but the other me.
It's okay.
I mean, it's another garage going, but they've got 2 off-road parking spaces. I mean, providing they keep those, it actually improves it. We get rid of the flat roof and put a nice apex
Yeah.
roof on. I think it improves
I
it.
thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I think she was worrying, but evidently you can from the letter it's some kind of
I mean,
grudge.
I can't think why they would lose those parking spaces that they have.
No.
But whether it's worth making the point that they need to retain them. I don't know.
Do you want to?
I think there's a principle here
yeah.
about losing garages. I'm not so
Provided,
bothered about losing garages. I am bothered about putting more cars on
provided
Yeah.
on the
parking
highway.
spaces.
There's clearly an issue
Okay.
nationwide, isn't there? But
The
particularly
thing with-
around here.
The thing with garages now is, like
People don't use
yeah,
them.
people don't use garages, people put cars in garages unless they've got some kind of really specialised car which they want to keep inside. Like my garage is full of other stuff and things like that. And it's like a lot of people.
That's unique to this
It is.
area. Most normal people in normal cities in Britain put cars in their garages, you know.
Yeah, but you
My
would
next
do
door
it.
neighbours brew in there.
Yeah, that's what I want to do in mine as well, actually.
Lots of business.
But like,
Come on,
yeah.
we've still got 10 to do.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay, sorry.
I know this is fun, but number 21, Rich.
Well, I found this quite entertaining. It's a place called the Granny Annex.
Yes.
But
Yeah, they're
then
turning the Granny
effectively
Annex
turning
into a family home.
Yeah, they're turning it into a 3-bed house. Even the name's a giveaway. So,
Might change the name of it.
Well,
I just thought
a
that
bit
was,
more these days.
that just seems just wrong. It's a separate house. It's not a. It's no
Yeah.
longer a Granny Annex. So I think Kurt Lees needs to look at it. So I suppose I'd object to it on that basis.
Object.
Yeah.
Is that a planning reason though?
Well, it's over intensification of the house, I suppose, isn't it? If you're adding an
We had
entire
one in
3-bed
Honley.
house to the
We had
side.
one in Honley where it clearly wasn't joined on, and it was
No.
they were building a separate house. And we objected to that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Over intensification would be a good reason.
I
But
think over intensification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Object.
Because it's clearly not
Cute. Right.
just an annex.
Oh, right. Be interested to know what you think about the next one. So number 22, Rachel.
Oh yeah, this was an interesting one. I couldn't quite decide what my view was because they're replacing the window with basically a sheet of glass so that then you could open some glass doors in so you get more air through your property. And there was an example of something in Golka which had been done in a similar way. It's quite it's a very visible end to an old mill building. To be honest, I thought we should support the Conservation Officer's view.
I think so.
Because I wasn't, I didn't feel strongly either way, but I'm not knowledgeable enough about how much that would change the aesthetic with the piece of glass.
I think it wasn't the piece of glass that bothered me, it was the fact that they were dropping the level because there was a band of stone going right across at the bottom of the window. I think there were 2 of the windows and this was the middle window, and they were dropping that down and putting a Juliet balcony in, and I thought it kind of spoilt so I'm happy to defer to, so no decision, defer to.
Well, unless we say unless we object to it on that basis, then object due to.
Well,
I'd be happy to object due to visual impact as glass in lower than existing window.
Yeah, I think the lowering of the sill.
They're turning a window into a French window, is that what you're saying?
Exactly,
And putting
yes,
a Juliet balcony to make it
But because it's the end of a mill building.
So it's
very
not the
symmetrical
glass that's the
design.
problem, it's the enlarging
I
of the
thought it
window.
was the dropping down of the window which kind of spoilt the symmetry of the whole thing, but
not in keeping them with the other bits.
being fussy.
No, let's go with that. Let's object to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rich.
I just was schooling up. What about this next one, Pat?
I support.
Support, yeah. I
Well, I had a few concerns about the fencing with it. I'm fine with the fact it's becoming a residential institution, so they didn't provide any information about what that would be. But I thought the fencing wasn't really in keeping with a listed building, because it's pretty, or the schematic almost looked like it was palisade fencing that went along the side, which I don't think would be in keeping with a listed building. So
shall we?
But it isn't a particularly pretty listed building. It's on a difficult corner.
yeah, but it's right sort of on the road, isn't it? I'd be happy to leave it to the listed buildings officer.
Okay.
Because I feel there should be something that's appropriate that doesn't preclude the use of it.
Yes, if they need the fence for security, and presumably they do, then they need to find a prettier version of a secure fence. Yeah.
So we're saying no decision, but leave to the buildings officer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Conservation. No, there wasn't much information for. Compared to the last time we had it.
Because the only people who see it are people walking their dogs or driving past. It's one of those where
it's hidden away.
It's not one of those pretty buildings that everybody loves, you know.
But it must be listed for a reason.
Yeah.
Number 24 is a listed building consent, so it's just our standard reply, no observation, support decision of the officers. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then the next one is another 4-stone. Lot in 4-stone.
It's an agricultural building at a farm. She's out in the middle of nowhere pretty much. It's not causing any impact to her. I think it's fine.
Yep. I thought it was okay too. Okay. Support. Oh, right, now this one. Oh dear.
Which one have we got to?
We are on number 26, the demolition of the market hall. And, yeah.
How long have we got?
How long have we got?
I have to say, I think it's the ugliest building in the valley.
I think it's appalling building. It's a dreadful building. Yeah.
Shall I comment on it?
Yes, please, please.
Because I'm conscious that lots of the, because obviously this is just the planning application for the demolition of the building and the car park bit, and I know some of the representations from neighbours were also talking about other things which were out with the planning section, so I'll just keep my comments to that. I think the market hall, because there's also two distinct things, that people want the market provision, and I'm very supportive of that because I want the market provision, but that's separate from the market hall. My understanding is that the market provision is going to continue, or at least Kirtleys are actively seeking people to continue, but I've chased Kirtleys to find out where that's got to, because the people applying to run the market, and that's all gone very quiet, so I don't know what the situation is. But the actual market hall itself is in a reasonably dilapidated condition. And whilst I don't find the building offensive, and I do think potentially it could have become easily accessible library, for example, actually we need an awful lot of something on it to make the bridge sound at the bottom and the building sound at the top. And when people say, oh, it's great, there's a market building with toilets in it, and you think, well, not really. I mean, there is a toilet, but it's scratty toilet. It's amazing what people love when it's threatened with closure. But but I do think I think there's some really positive things with the scheme. I don't like the way it's graphically presented, or indeed the visualisation of it. It looks a bit 70s and it looks very square. But when you go past it, you realise how concretey it all is at the minute. And actually, with the addition of quite a lot of landscaping, the more of a visual connection to the river from both sides, and the accessibility through the town to be able, as a pedestrian, to get down onto Holligate and back up again without, obviously previously you could go through the Mill shop, although they were never very keen on me doing it, but I did it regularly, and particularly if it was raining. But it's nice to have that porous route through, and I think, to be honest, whilst I'm sure there's improvements can be made, and I think we should highlight the need for the materials to be in keeping with the style of the conservation area, I do welcome the general design, and I know people say, well, it's interesting actually, the representations either said it's ridiculous that we're providing more car parking don't you realise as a climate emergency nobody should be using your cars? And then when you speak to the majority of people, they all whinge about the fact there's nowhere to park in Home Firth. So there's a bit of a, there's a real tension really between the two schools of thought. And I don't think, whilst they've only created, I don't know, 2 extra parking spaces, but that's not really the issue. The parking will be more spaced out, so theoretically it should be easier to use, but also it should retain an open space that could be used for events at the top. But more importantly, at the bottom, it actually creates quite a nice open space where the designers have thought about putting the bins in a hidden place. So I think, I mean, we can all dream of what we might do with limitless budgets in the middle of Home Firth, but I think this has reflected some community feedback. Obviously, again, there's always people who will disagree. And I, on balance, would support this proposal, provided the materials are done in such are in keeping with the conservation area. Because on the schematic, it all looks like it's going to be brick. Obviously, it's not going to be brick, it's just the way the schematic looks. So obviously, I know others will have different views.
Thank you, Rachel. Who else wishes to comment? Anne?
I'm going to say the opposite.
You're allowed to.
I mean, you can't get away from it. It's not a pretty building, but you do wonder whether something could be done with it to make it look prettier. We're gaining 3 parking spaces. You know, really? We're going to lose a building for 3 parking spaces? And the parking area itself doesn't look pretty. I think it was Doug who mentioned it's not really in keeping with Home Firth, what's been proposed. Where are the cobbles and where are the sort of wrought iron railings and pretty sort of furniture that we'd expect to see in Home Firth? It looks like a 70s type development. If you look at the comments, I think it's 33 last time I would say probably there's only 3 that's actually in favour of it. Most of them are saying pretty much the same thing. Let's keep it. We should really listen to what people are saying.
Haven't we already approved this? Actually, did the overall plan for the central?
No, I mean, I think Kirklees has been a little bit...
No, as a parish council, as
Oh,
a planning committee.
Yeah.
Ages, and in fact, as a full council, we had a lengthy discussion about what was going and what was coming, and the whole plan, and we, in the end, endorsed it and approved it.
Yeah, but that doesn't preclude us from
It doesn't preclude us because it's specifics, isn't it? Right, it's right. Tom.
Are you finished, Andy? Or are you still speaking? I'll speak afterwards.
Yeah, just on that point, I think Kirklees originally put forward a plan. Doesn't it go back to 2016, and this was part of it, and that was rejected fairly overwhelmingly, about 80%.
Yeah.
Now they say they've addressed that, but of course they never did another sort of went out and asked for opinions on that. They've just said they've addressed it. So whether they have or not, in their opinion they have. I don't think they have. Certainly not fully.
I do think on that, Andy, that the consultation was very greatly curtailed because of the COVID regulations. I think it stopped them doing the kind of consultation that they had before, which they had so many responses, and all of them negative. So they did do a consultation, but obviously it was more limited, and it was sort of online. But I guess they did what they could.
I mean, this is only part of that anyway.
And it's only part of the whole.
And of course, we can only look at what's in front of us, and that's just the market hall.
Yeah. My thoughts are the original plans that came in were rubbish. The parish council kind of rejected them straight up before some of your time on the council, and told them to go back and look at what they were doing. And that's why they come forward with this plan, which is better than the original one. But there's still a lot of people who want to keep the market hall, understandably. But Kirklees have got no aspirations. They don't want to keep the market hall there because they don't think it's busy enough and it generates enough money, and it needs a lot of money spending on it. And if they aren't going to keep the market hall or keep the market there, then what do we do with it instead? Do we build another market hall there which is better and all nicer? Is that going to happen? No, Kirklees won't spend the money on that. It's not going to happen. So what we've got is this. What we've got instead, which isn't perfect, it isn't ideal. I think it's better than seeing a building, a direct building in the middle of Home Firth, and being empty like that, it's by no means ideal. Ideally, we would have a nice market hall, or they'd put some provision somewhere else, and there's talk about them doing it elsewhere. There's talk about them doing it at Crown Bottom, or some area around about there and other things. And I think like an outdoor market would be nice. I think people would go to that more, especially with the current climate, with people not wanting to go inside shopping and things like that. It's a bit safer having a market outside. It's a shame with the old building. It is run down. It's been underutilised throughout the years. Police haven't managed it as best as they can do, I don't think. And it's just that's what's happened. Like I agree with Andy about the consultation. The original consultation was extremely negative, and that's why Kirklees had to change their plans, because it was just overwhelmingly negative towards what they had before. If they were to do a consultation about it now, I'd imagine, like you say, that the comments that have gone in are mostly negative. I don't know how it would be if they did it now. I think it would be better, it would be more reasonable than what it was before. It might be 60-40 one way, I don't know. But we'll never know because they haven't done this consultation, and they probably won't do, because I think they have to do these things within a certain amount of time, or they don't get the money to spend on it. So you might think that they're rushing it through, which they might be doing for that reason, so they can get the money. And it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a shame, really. Rachel probably tell me about that.
The last few times I went into the market, there were 3 or 4 stalls. It was a sad, empty. Huddersfield Market is failing because there's nobody in there. The changed nature of the high street. Wakefield, they've had to change the use of it because they gave up. There were so few people in the indoor market. There isn't any demand. There aren't any retailers wanting to use indoor market. So, it's not just, Kirkley is not just objecting because they want, they don't get the income they would like. I mean, it's just, it's a white elephant really in this day and age, because indoor markets round here are just failing all over the place.
I was going to say, I think lots of people sort of cite successful markets like in Altrincham, and there's other locations where you end up, they're effectively, they're a social space. They're not really, they're somewhere you can buy stuff, but they're often effectively restaurants. I mean, there's a very nice one in the middle of Manchester in an old market building, and they're usually buildings that have got some architectural merits that make most of there's an atmosphere in there. And, I mean, it's got to be said, Home Firth is not short of eateries and nice places to go for the evening. So I'm not sure there's kind of a big hole in the town that would be filled by that. And I think there are a couple of, as you say, the market is woefully underused, but there are a couple of key stalls which actually have a very loyal following, of which I am one of those people who regularly uses the market. But I think actually talking to the market traders, they're quite happy about the prospect of being outside, and obviously they have the temporary cover things. So I think provided we keep making sure, keep pushing Kirklees to retain the market service, I don't see, I mean, actually, you're right, Andy, in terms of, we need to reflect what people think, but I must admit, I was surprised there were only 33 comments, if I'm honest. I thought there would be, so far, but there has been a lot. I mean, Home Valley Vision, for example, has sent round the plan several times. It's been on Facebook numerous times to prompt people to comment on it. And I think, to some extent, people just want it all to be just get on with it, sort it out. Make that space used, because ultimately you just get past what's an empty building all the time, or it appears empty from the top anyway. So I think the prospect of creating a more open space that can then actually be positively used, particularly off Holligate, I think is to be welcomed. And I think the point about railings and things and cobbles, I think that's well worth flagging. I think there in the design, I know there are an awful lot of documents that were in it, but there was stuff with railings, but it wasn't entirely clear where they were. And there was something about working with the artist to make sure the bridge was appropriate. So I think there's something to say. We want to make sure that the design is bespoke and in keeping with the nature of Home Firth's heritage and conservation area.
I'm conscious that we've
been
going near an hour and a half, and we've still got some weighty stuff. So I think Tom and then Andy.
My quick comment. was that like at the Peace Hall in Halifax, they've got an outdoor area there which we use for these events, and let's talk about using this for events as well and using it for different things. I'd like to know how often, maybe something we can raise to Kirklees, how often they're going to be doing that, maybe every week or once a month. It'd just be good to have like a space there, like the Peace Hall has, like that place in Manchester as well, they do these little things and have these little events, and that'd be quite nice. So I'd like to know how often they're going to do it, but
I don't think it'll be Kirklees doing it.
No.
It will be local groups
Yeah.
wanting to use it. A
Yeah.
bit like, to be fair, you could close the bus station car park.
yeah,
which
like
I
they do
have
for
done
the food
Christmas
festival.
things before.
Yeah,
But, you know, it's all
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks.
Just very briefly, I mean, if we are to support it, could we tie this to having the alternative in place as well, or before? Because I think there's a danger here that it'll get knocked down and that'll be the end of it. We'll not see a market anywhere.
Do you mean having a market somewhere?
Yeah, well, there is
Yeah.
this vague sort of promise, isn't there?
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Possibly
it's-
Crown Bottom,
yeah.
but it's nothing
But
more
I-
than that at the moment.
Well, I
Something
think
a
it's
bit
more.
concrete.
I think
It
it's
is more
more.
than a promise,
It's more
but
than
it's-
a
yeah.
promise because groups are being asked to tender and groups have tendered. But I must admit, I don't quite know what's happened just recently. But groups have tendered, so it is going to happen.
But I think it is worth, I think you're right.
But
I think we should mention
yeah,
as to,
So-
you know, we recognise local
Reinforce.
concern about the loss of
the loss of the market. With,
provision and wish to continue to push for.
That's it, I'll shut up now.
Oh, it's
Don't
fine,
shut up.
Andy.
Good comments, it's good comments.
We're supposed to
So-
debate these things.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah.
It's helping debate.
Yeah. It's not good if you all agree. Not all the time. It's not good, is
As
it?
long as it's all done in friendly terms, it's fine.
Remarket. Right.
So what's the decision on that then? It was to,
Sorry.
what's the decision with the
So I
proposal?
think the decision is to support it.
Support it
Support
with
it,
the comments that Rachel made.
with two, yeah. So
To make it more
one of
subject
the
in
concern
keeping.
is ensuring the materials in keeping with the conservation, with the materials used in the
So I think
conservation.
so.
area.
And reiterate the desire for a market area.
I think it's
Surfacing
just
and
out.
railing.
I think it's just out the conservation area
Yeah.
that part, isn't it? I don't think that's in the conservation area for the market always. Well,
Well,
If
they
it
seem
is-
to think it was in reading all.
if
yeah.
it is, they should never have been allowed to build the market on in the first place.
Especially-
And the others as well, but
No,
anyway.
I mean it's not an old building because I learned from
Really a
it
70s building.
it was the Methodist. It was a Methodist church there till.
Horrible
Yeah.
thing.
No, it's
So-
in the conservation area.
Okay, fair,
So
okay,
the
fair point.
materials in keeping, particularly the surface and the railings, surface
Yeah.
and railings.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
then secondly, and very importantly, recognising local concerns about the loss of market space and assurance that it will be provided elsewhere. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody. That was a good run round it really. Right, moving on, number 27.
Another one in poor Edgemore Road. You're not going to be able to... Edgemore Road's going to be like Hyde Park Corner. This one, I didn't have enough information to come to a judgment. I can't support it. There was no application form. There were only plans. And I couldn't really make sense of the plans.
Okay.
No comment then if we can't make a
I
no comment.
thought this one was quite funny though, because it said it was going to demolish the garage at the back, and then I looked on Google Maps to, you know,
Yeah.
so you can see.
Yeah.
And the garage is already blocked in by the extension, so they've built an extension.
Yes.
There's a garage at the back, which
So you
presumably
could never
classified
get-
obviously
you
used
could
as
never get
storage.
a carriage
But it's
there.
garage, because you couldn't get there.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't they demolish it?
Yeah.
You can't get a car there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but if
But there was no application form.
There
There
was
was
no
no mention of what
the
materials
materials.
would be used or
So-
no, it's
anything.
that's
Yeah.
fine.
So we're not
It's just
commenting
weird.
because
Need
it's
more
insufficient-
information.
insufficient information, right?
I'm glad I don't live in Edgemore already.
That's right. Discharge. Okay. Number 20. Number 28.
Really understand
Again.
that. Another one.
So it's a discharge of conditions. So we make notes of it. It's our standard.
But they've commented already, haven't they, Kirklees? There's a letter.
Yeah, so it's when Kirklees about condition on them. And if you build your house and you meet the condition, you can ask for a discharge on it, just to complete the planning and all that
They've
process.
already replied and said they need an AIP. It just seems a bit odd. I don't know why you would
I don't
ask for a
understand it.
discharge when they've already asked you for something.
Right.
Well, so with Kirklees.
Anyway,
Right, next one, number 29, agricultural building. It looked very small to me, next to stable and well hidden. I couldn't see any problem with it. Are we okay? Support?
I didn't know they had goose stables.
I thought that was,
Something like that.
we used to have geese and we didn't keep them in a stable.
Well, that's what it's called as well. I never would have called it.
I mean, I knew they came in to sleep.
They do,
I'd
they
call
do.
it-
Goose shed.
They do come in,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I've called it, but maybe it used to be a stable and they just want to keep the birds.
We digress, right,
I don't
okay.
know, goose stables and oranges. We'll be having MP's duck houses
It's
next on Lake.
Oh, it's one of those.
Pat, again, number 30.
Support.
Support. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yep.
good. Oh, it was creating another
Yeah.
one-bed property, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was good.
It looked good. It looked really interesting.
3 one-bed
It's going on,
properties
isn't
in one
it?
evening.
Yeah, doing well.
Yeah, it's great.
Right, the partial demolition of buildings to create dwelling from annex. Oh, I went and looked at this afternoon, and there's not much information. It's very recently we dealt with an application to make to put, I can't remember, was it 2 dwellings into one, or one along the same. It's all associated with Lane House Farm. It's right at the back. It's well off the road. But I didn't like the extent. I can see why they wanted to demolish this, because it's brick built, horrible looking shed. But I didn't like the. I didn't really like the timber cladding in the extension. I don't know. Did anybody else look?
I looked, but
Didn't feel strongly about it.
I looked all right.
That's probably about it. Right. It just didn't. It just because it's kind of an L shape of several, and it just looks so different in its. It's the style of the building and the materials were just so different. I just thought it didn't really fit in. But it's all a bit of a kind of scrappy, scraggy kind of.
That's fine, just object to the material.
Let's
not
just
appropriate.
object to
Inappropriate material.
object.
Well, where is that one? Is it just on the left hand side? Is it
It's
going
as you come out, as you come White Wells, White Wells Road,
Yeah.
opposite of White Wells Road where it joins Paris, just across there.
Oh, right, okay.
It's got a huge great school. Yeah, because I couldn't make sense of it just from looking at the documents. Okay, and the last one, the agricultural shed. Right, me again. Yes, the previous application was withdrawn, and this is a response to the criticism of the previous application. The very long explanation as to why it should be allowed. And I thought it was fine. They've moved it for 2 or 3 cows, and they've moved it closer to the house, which seems to be what's.
Because the neighbours complained before,
The
didn't they,
neighbours
about the
complained
smell?
before about the smell, because it was right across, close to them and away from the house. So I think,
Yeah.
I think it's okay. So you support that one, right? Okay, we've done it. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody. Right, new planning applications. Right, planning, moving on back to the agenda. Item 90, Kirklees Council Planning Officers' decisions. There were a couple we supported and Kirklees Council refused.
Well, we're only noting.
We're only noting,
Noted.
so I'm going to note those, thank
Noted.
you. Right, 91, neighbourhood planning, Rachel.
Oh, sorry, yes, I did.
You
Well, they should
started
say
it earlier on, didn't you?
I kind of
Yes.
did, yeah. But
I've told them, yeah.
yes, so it goes to the neighbourhood plan with its modifications is being recommended by the Kirklees officers to Kirklees Cabinet on the 31st of August. And there's 3 things I think it is that they ask the council to approve, so Kirklees Council to approve. One is the fact that the plan with its modifications should progress, basically should go through the process to go to referendum. The second is that I think the referendum date is suggested as 4th of November, which will be a Thursday, I guess. And the third thing, which is right, was the question that the referendum will ask, and the question, there was a choice of 3, but really only one of them is applicable to an area that's a parish, so it's obvious which one they choose, which is, just for interest, do you want Kirklees Council and the Peak District National Park Authority to use the neighbourhood plan for the Home Valley neighbourhood area to help it decide planning applications in the neighbourhood area? It's a wordy question, but it is quite clear about what it's asking. So
it is also a very leading question, my God. A market researcher wouldn't allow that, but I'm not going to. I'll leave my market researchers at all.
Well, anyway, but there is a formal. There's a formal wording
to say
yeah.
yes.
So there's a formal wording that hasn't been written by Kirklees. That's written by the neighbourhood planning legislation.
Really?
I think. So it's like a specific questions they can choose from. Now, so from our point of view, it means that provided it goes through Cabinet, then the plan, as modified, will then be in a position to be published on our website for people to see, and obviously Kirklees will be publishing it on their website. But what I think I mentioned at our last meeting was the fact that I think it would be sensible for us to at least think about communicating with everybody in the valley, and rather than just through the Home Valley Review and Facebook and a few posters, to encourage people to actually understand what is the neighbourhood development plan, remind them that it's taken 5 years to develop, and it's a good idea if people can take the time to vote. So I did a little bit of research and found I got the list from Kirklees of all the addresses that were in the electoral area covered by the parish, and it's a list of about 12,500 addresses. I finally got through to Royal Mail earlier just to discover what the costs would be for if we wanted a flyer to go, not in an envelope, but just a flyer that we obviously clearly have to pay to create and print, but to go through all the letterboxes of those places within the postcode. It would end up tipping into a few areas which wouldn't quite be in the postcode, but you can't really get around that. That would cost in the region of £830, excluding VAT. And that's for having a flyer that could be no bigger than an A4, less than 100 grams, and no more than 5mm thick. I'm not proposing we do a whole booklet on it, but I do think we would benefit from having at least an A5 flyer that just said, this is what it is, this is where you find out information, this is why we think it's an important way to give people in the valley more of a voice on planning decisions in the future. We can't campaign for the yes, I suppose, so we have to work out, well, we can't. So we have to work out just some wording that's appropriate to say this is your opportunity to do it, but doesn't tell people to vote yes.
Haven't we already approved some money for that?
There is some money in the budget.
Well, we've got some money in the budget, so I was going to say that I would, if I could ask that I am able to work with Rich and the chair on understanding how much is left in the budget and whether we would need to potentially get a bit more from the budget to find out the cost of doing a flyer, which would really need to be in the same design style as all the other applications we did. So that them and work on the wording, and that could come back to the next planning committee for approval.
So
can I suggest that you don't bring the wording back to any committee at all?
Yeah,
If you have a couple of people agree the wording, not a whole committee.
Yeah. No.
Sorry, Andy.
who pays for the referendum?
Kirklees Council.
So we don't have to worry about
No,
it.
we don't have to worry about it. In fact, there's something in the cabinet paper that was quite interesting. The referendum itself costs about £35,000, but nearly all of that is paid for by central government grants. So Kirklees itself doesn't pay a huge amount.
Tim told us how much it costs.
Yeah, I'm happy with Rachel's suggestion. I think it's better us doing this. And I don't like to call it a box ticking exercise, but it kind of is, because come May or come April, people will say, oh, we entered in through what's this? We can say, we've done this, we've done that, and that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm fully for it. And £850 to get something out to all the households.
Well,
doesn't seem too
very
bad.
cheap.
Yeah, I know we're going to print them all out as well and do all that. So it's probably going to come to about...
Yeah, the production will be 2 or 3 times that, I would think.
I don't know. I don't know how much it'll cost, but still, like, it seems quite reasonable, I thought.
Yeah. So we're agreeing in principle that we'll...
Yeah, I mean, obviously it needs to come back with final costs of what it would be, because I can get a quote for the design and the printing once we have a designed.
That presumably will be finance it goes to rather than planning, won't it?
Well, the budget's within planning.
Oh, is it?
Budgets, yes, we have a small
But I
budget.
need to check how much we've got left.
I'm in favour of it in
Yeah.
principle.
But in principle, are we happy in principle?
Very
Yeah,
with
to,
doing
it's
it,
great
to
to
suggest, which
progress
is
with
to-
it and bring more back
Yeah.
to the future meeting.
Good, thank you. Right, 92, item 92, Peak District National Park Authority, only one, there was only, well, it was just, one was a listed building consent, it was the same development, so that was fine, we agreed. Right, the 93, this vexed new mill mast, we're only asking at the moment to just note that we've had further communication, which
I didn't realise that it had shrunk. I must admit, I thought it was the same
Yeah, I thought
application.
I thought it was the same, but I'm not going to contradict him at this point.
Noted.
So we note that because it
We'll-
wasn't.
we'll- we'll
And then a
come
new
through soon,
application will come
We'll
through.
come
won't
back
it?
and then
Yeah.
we can go through the whole.
Should we not take the opportunity to write back and say no? You don't like it? Because isn't that the point of them consulting with us, so that they get some idea of what we
Should we
think?
just feedback with the same comments we did before? Knocking 3 metres off it doesn't make much of a difference to me when it's 15,
It's
18
where
to
it is
15
that we're
metres.
concerned about, yeah.
It's
Yeah, well, let's just check our facts though, because we think it's just the visibility display that was different, didn't we?
No, I
Let's make
think
sure
the height
about-
is
height.
different.
The height
The
is
height is different.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Okay.
9 feet different.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody said it's not. I mean, it's quite a lot different. It's a lot shorter. But
It's still
if in their previous application, as this chap said, they said that 18 was the absolute minimum that would work, how come 15 will work now?
No, well, who knows? Right. So do we wish to just repeat what we or we wait?
Sorry, I was just going to comment, because at the end of their letter,
Yeah.
it says, if you have any feedback on these proposals, we look forward to receiving your comments. So
Yeah.
I think we should say,
Okay.
we discussed it again, we note that you've shortened it, but it's still excessive in height, and we remain concerned about its location.
the issues remain the same.
Yeah.
Reiterate the previous
Yeah.
issues.
Can I suggest that
Yeah.
we mention, I know I just said it on the hoof before, but the fact that in areas of national parks and things, that there must be more sympathetic designs that they are able to offer, which are clearly more expensive.
Mm.
We
But
want
they're
them to
going to
consider other
they're going to
options.
make shitloads of money, so.
What's that
Shitloads.
Yes, we have to. Okay,
Is that
we
all right?
should do that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you wouldn't
Is
mind.
that all right, Rich?
It only needs to be short and sweet,
Yeah.
but I just think they've asked for our comment, so I think
Yeah.
it's a bit
Yeah, fair
churlish
enough.
not to
When we're
reply
asked-
until the
when we're asked
formal
for comments.
comments.
We should always take the
Yeah.
opportunity.
So, thank you.
Right, number 94 we've already dealt with.
Yeah.
The number 95, the Head Edge Road intersection. I'm surprised. I thought perhaps they would have come this evening, but they do know that I did tell them that nothing has moved on. So we're waiting for a date for a private informal meeting once Elizabeth Twitcher is back from compassionate leave. Okay.
Could that be before the next planning meeting?
Well, it
I
depends
would-
when she's
It
back from
depends-
her
It
compassionate
depends.
leave.
Yes, it
doesn't
depends when she.
Is she the only person being carefully?
Well,
Probably.
she's been put forward by.
It's just that when was it
I know,
that we had
times,
the people here
yeah.
saying?
Yeah, it was last meeting. Well, if we can, but it's just a question of getting us all together, isn't it? Perhaps if so, where is it with that?
I think it would be better to wait for the person who knows all the ins and outs than
Yeah.
have somebody who steps in for her
Yeah,
and may not know.
yeah.
Just that the next planning meeting is
3 weeks off.
at the end of
3 weeks
September.
off.
Is it about
We talked in July about this, and these people in Head Edge.
Well, yes,
that's how quite a lot of things work with Kirklees. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but they do take the time with some of these things, and they've been waiting 11 years for this thing at Head Edge.
I was going to say,
It's not-
let me
it's not
quote
good,
to
I'm
you
not defending
Homley Library, which still isn't completed.
Yeah,
Right.
These things go on and on.
maybe I've just been on the council too long and I'm too cynical these days.
And over the
Well,
years,
yeah, I
they've
know what
had
you mean.
fewer and fewer staff to deal with it, So.
Would members of the committee be willing to meet if it wasn't
We could have an extraordinary meeting.
Could we
Well,
even
it's
do
it's just an
could we even do a
informal-
Zoom? Because it's an informal meeting.
It's just an informal.
Then it's
meeting.
it's not a full planning meeting. We could do it on Zoom even or something like that.
The only trouble
It
about
might suit them better.
is about because of the plans and things and not quite suit mine. They could put them up on the screen, couldn't they?
If it's going to be an informal
Yeah.
discussion anyway,
Okay.
we could do it
Yeah.
using other things like Zoom, and it might suit their schedules better. It might not
Yeah.
have to be a Monday night. It could be another night. Like
Yeah, perhaps if we ask for availability. Right, but we can't do anything until there's Twitch at his back from.
yeah, but we have to wait till they're back. I think I agree with Pat that we should use the right person.
I agree with you, Andy, because I've had communication emails from them asking, you know, reiterating what they've already said. Right, let's move on. This footpath, the
Intake
how are we going to deal with this footpath? Consider response to the proposed diversion. Tremendous cheek of the landlord.
Sorry,
London.
I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know the area particularly well, to be honest, but looking from a desktop perspective, if you like, it strikes me that the original footpath effectively just went to that one building and then in that shape, and effectively the suggested diversion seems to just cut the corner for someone who's wishing to carry on walking, unless you were going to that property. It's not as if there's another path that then goes out beyond far out on the right hand side, so I can't see any particular reason to highlight any concerns about it. Obviously I'm conscious footpath associations and things may know of other reasons why that path is historically of interest, but it feels to me as if it was one that was a connection to a building and then a connection out the other side. So.
I wasn't entirely clear about, wasn't there some mention about an extension of interference
Yes.
to the original road? But they seem to be just trying to put things right, rather than, say, oh, well, we built this, now we need to change the path. I think they were just trying to do the right thing almost.
So it means they're not told off or they're not charged with, It seemed fairly sensible.
Seems to me.
And also, I suppose I'm conscious with the wolf thing, there is a very active, knowledgeable footpath ramblers group of people who will be on the circulation list of these, and it strikes me if they were concerned about this, it would be surprising if we hadn't heard, or indeed if they didn't tell us, they would contact Curtleys about it. But on the face of it, I can't see any reason why we should object to it.
So are we going to say we have no comments? Or are we happy with it?
I'd be happy with it from what I can see.
Support it? Yeah, okay. It also seems to me sad when some route is changed, but then things change, I suppose. Seems a bit sad. Right, anyway, it just seemed like a sensible solution to a problem of the landowners making. Right, move on. Planning committee members to review applications for wards. I just propose to go through these. So, Pat, I just want to ask you, I mean, you were doing all of the Rockhalls ones at the moment, is that?
I'm doing Rockhalls and Honley at the moment.
Honley,
Michael is not only chair of this council now, but he's got this fairly new job, which is very, very demanding. So, I mean, frankly, we could do with another Honley.
I was just wondering, Andy, if you...
I was going to suggest that, I mean, I'm open to doing anything, but doing the Upper Holme Valley one, I live there, it's adjacent to Upper Holme, and we don't have anyone covering the Upper Holme Valley.
Yes, we do. Right. Do you want Yeah, Rachel's been...
Sorry.
But no, I'm very happy.
Tread anyone's toes.
Do you want to relinquish that then?
Yeah,
Put Andy in?
I mean,
Sorry,
to be honest, I do
Andy,
generally
yeah.
try and look at all the...
Sorry for the
Sorry
councillor Black's thing as well.
Oh yeah, you've got my name wrong. I thought I wouldn't bother telling you that.
Obviously, autocorrect must have kicked in.
I mean, ultimately, I'm
I'll
happy to
get
do,
called all
I'm
sorts
happy
of
to do
things.
anything.
Right, can we go back to the top of the list? So Pat, Pat's obviously, as you can see for tonight, got quite a big load on it. You just, sorry.
Yeah, I don't mind taking on Brockholes as well, because Brockholes it's kind of joins onto New Mill
Okay.
Ward,
Oh, right.
so that's not too bad for me. I know Brockholes pretty well.
Okay,
I don't really
We
know.
work together on the huge development.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
Actually, I might regret saying this now. But
Yeah, just before you commit, there is the matter of
Scratch that.
147 houses going on.
But we'll all help support you.
yeah.
But there's a whole committee,
yeah.
there's a whole room full of people who are concerned about that.
I'll take on the side extensions in Brockholes. I don't mind taking on Brockholes. It's adjacent to,
Tom's fine with that.
and if Pat's doing the whole of Honley, I don't know what some of the Honley roads, but I could work out with Broccoli.
Yeah, right, okay, so let's
That's a bit in the middle of Broccoli.
let's just whip down this. So Brockholes, that's going to be Tom, thank you. Fulston, you okay carrying on doing that, Tom?
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously you do
Hepworth,
Hepworth. Rachel obviously does Home First Central, Homley Central East is Pat. Are you okay doing those three, or would you?
Well, I do anyway. I
You
have
do
been
them in-
ever
you've
since
been-
I've been on the council, to be honest.
So that's. Are you all right to continue doing those? So we remove.
I don't honestly know where the boundaries
We
are.
remove
of the
Pogson.
Honley.
Councillor Gould is, I assume, will be able to rejoin us at some point, but until then I'll continue looking at those anyway. Scholes, it's me and Paul Dixon, Upper Home Valley, Andy, and Upper Thom, Andy, yeah, and Woldo, well, I don't mind, I'll cover for him because it's where I live, so, right. Is that okay? We're happy with that? Yeah. I'm afraid, you know, Richard's valiant efforts to get other councillors to comment on applications went very well at first, but somehow the difficulty's gone off and this stopped.
I know, well, I got out of the habit of being more directive about it, to be honest. I might start
I
again.
mean, nagging. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I didn't know I was on holiday last time.
I think it's quite good to, if we can get
If we
comments.
can.
Yeah.
But I also think it makes life easier on the committee if people, at least, even if they're only able to look in detail at the ones on in their areas, if they can at least look at the big, I always think new houses,
Yeah.
big development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all look at those.
Yeah.
Things in the
Because otherwise we
centre,
can't.
things in the centre of town that are not just dwellings
Yeah.
and that.
Yeah.
Can I just say I will miss the next meeting? I will be
Right.
in Brighton, but I'll send me comment.
Right. And the final item is the death of Rob Dolby, and so just to thank Rich for his this really sensitive email to Colin Carr. Thank you for doing that, Rich. That's great.